Thank you for joining us today on this edition of the Zoo Media Podcast. I'm your host, 20Eggers, joined today by Sam Shakur. Thank you for joining us on the show today, Sam.
Good to be with you.
All right, Sam, so just tell us a little bit about who you are.
I'm an international student from Israel. I go to Azusa Pacific University. I'm majoring in computer science.
That's great, man. You're a long way from home, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
Well, we're glad to have you here today with us on the show. Tell us a little bit about where you're from and what your life was like in Israel.
So I grew up in a city called Sakhnin. It's an Arab city in Galilee. That city is mainly Arabs, which are divided into two main religions, which is Christians and Muslims. Muslims are the majority in Israel. In Sakhnin. The Christians that live in my city were about 2,000, while the rest is about 40,000 Muslims. So I was the minority to grow up in school. Growing up as the minority in Sakhnin felt different than having the majority. Because, for example, when I was in middle school, high school, I was called names because there's a lot of tensions between Christians and Muslims, not as much as Jewish and Muslims, but I've been called names. If you don't have friends, like friends that could back you up in middle school or high school, then you're going to be bullied as the minority, and Christian specifically.
Israel sounds like a pretty unique place. But the reason we brought you on the air today is we wanted to talk a little bit about your perspective on some of the conflict that's going on in that part of the world, the Palestinian conflict between, the religions and the different people groups there. So can you explain a little bit about what's going on there and what that conflict is about?
So yeah, that conflict mainly started in 1948 when Israel was established as a country and Palestine was not declared as a country by the United Nations. After that happened, after 1948, the Palestinians felt like they were mistreated and stabbed in the back by the other countries in the world. So they wanted to get the land that they think that was assigned to Israel's territory. So they started fighting for that.
Is there a historical context to this? Obviously we read in the Bible the conflict between Israel and some of its neighboring nations, in the Old Testament and stuff. Can you explain a little bit about the historical context to this conflict?
I don't think the Bible really says or talks about the conflict specifically between Palestine and Israel. But the Bible does prophesy about the Jews coming back to Israel, and that happened in 1948 when the Jews came back and it was established as a country again.
Could you tell us a little bit about what was it like to grow up in the tension of the Palestinian conflict?
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up as a Christian, like I said, because we were the minority there. We did not have a loud voice to present ourselves and stuff like that. We did not support the Jewish or the Muslims, especially me personally.
So you would say that living in Israel, you experienced the conflict differently than maybe other areas of the Middle East, correct?
So in Israel, it's very civil, but when you go to the Gaza Strip or around Palestine, between the borders between Israel and Palestine, that's where there is danger, I would say. But where I grew up, or any other place that is far from the Israeli and Palestinian border, is safe and calm.
Well, I'm glad that where you grew up, it wasn't a traumatic experience for you. Can you tell us a little bit about how you understand Americans perceive the Middle Eastern conflict? And maybe could you tell us a little bit how it's actually different than what reality is like over there?
Yeah. So I think that from my experience meeting with Americans and people that are outside of my country, some people just hear about it on the news and have no idea what's going on. But I think that the people that are intellectual and actually care for other people understand what it's going on.
Sam, could you tell us right now on the air, what are a few things that you want people to know about the truth of the Palestinian conflict?
Yeah, there's I would like for the media to be exposed, which I think that is being covered all around the world. The problem that they are covering is that the Jewish or the Israeli Defense Forces are occupying and going into Palestinian homes at night and kicking people outside of their homes, leaving them without any place to stay.
That's a sad thing to hear. Tell us a little bit about how you see things shaking out here. Is there a resolution that you can see on the horizon for us, or what's it going to be like?
I think this conflict is an ongoing conflict. Even if Palestine was declared as a country, I'm not sure how the relationship would be still between the Jewish people and the Palestinian people. I think that even if it was declared as a country, either country would still want more of each territory, and the people would still be in bad relationship.
So do you see the conflict being more of a territorial dispute than a religious misunderstanding?
I don't think it started out with either religion or ethnical. I think it started out with the human greed that started with both countries. I think after Israel being declared as a country and obviously having more power by being supported by the United States, it took over a couple of Palestinian territories, and that Palestinians feel like a stranger came into their house and he took over their property, and I would not think that's an easy thing to handle. But that caused the Palestinians to hate the Jewish people.
What's one thing that you think should be done to help aid this conflict, to help to mend the relationships, and potentially even bring an end to the Palestinian conflicts?
I don't think that this conflict will ever end to the fullest, but I do believe that this situation could go easier and the people could be more calm about this by getting all the Israeli Defense Forces out of the Palestinian regions first, and then giving them back their territories and declaring Palestine as a country. That way each country can become a country of its own with its own problems.
Man, I hope that they're able to accomplish something like that to make things a little bit easier over there. Unfortunately, though, we're about out of time with you, Sam. Thank you so much for being on the show with us today.
My pleasure.
And it was great to have you. Alrighty, well that'll do it for this edition of the Zoom Media Podcast. Big thanks to Ben Sound for providing the audio. Be sure to tune in next time on the Zoom Media Podcast.